Hello, we are live this Tuesday with Dr. Eve, I'm going to say. E- Eve is joining us. We're going to talk about something very important, and we're talking about COVID related, um, I want to say, arrested social development, academic development in teens. Our teens were, depending on if they're 13 now or 19 now, they were in a different stage when the lockdown happened. And so they were home for a couple of years. Some of them for almost 2 years were home doing school on virtually or hybrid versions. And then all of a sudden they were tossed back out into the world of school. And a lot of them missed critical milestones and social development points. And they weren't given a chance to make up for that. They were just kind of thrown into the next phase of life and told to go on. And it's hard to get to if you stopped at phase 2 and you were thrown into phase 6. What happened to 3, 4, and 5? When do we get that? And a lot of parents and families are seeing this. So today we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how families can help teens recover 3, 4, and 5. And some of that is academic and some of that is social emotional development. We know that emotional and social changes in teens are plenty, that socialization is a huge part of that. And if they weren't socializing during this critical period, they may not have some of the skills that they need in this now phase 6, 7, and 8 and going on. But before we get into the discussion, Dr. Eve's going to tell us a little bit about herself and the work that she does. And I'm going to remind you that if you have a question, just pop it into the comment section and we'll get to it. Thank you. Thank you, Eve. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Kamira. I'm so happy to be here. So basically, in terms of my background, I really work at that intersection between education and social emotional because I'm a learning disability specialist as well as a child and adolescent clinical psychologist. I work in private practices. I have bicoastal practices in New York as well as California. And I also have a third program that we've been working on called the Child Parent Educator Collective, and that is geared toward community-based interventions, supporting parents, supporting teachers and educators, and students all together. Because what we've seen from the COVID pandemic is that there has been a true increase in mental health and educational needs as a result of the pandemic. We know that prior to the pandemic, there were issues in terms of 1 in 5 teenagers were experiencing mental health and or educational issues. And after the pandemic, the numbers have increased to 1 in 3. So that's really impacting everyone everywhere. I know I alone, I'm a parent of 3. So if we're talking about 1 in 3, right, that would hit my family too. So I'm really glad to be here to speak about what we can do as parents to help support our children.
So tell us, what are the things that educators and families are seeing as far as arrested social development and also academic?
Right. So it's actually really interesting. Maybe 2 weeks ago, I was at a parent meeting at my children's high school. I have 2 in high school and 1 in college. And the high school was talking about a mental wellness day that they had done. And they assessed the children, and they found that over 73% were feeling a sense of stress, and which is a huge number. And when we were talking about what that stress was, it was both academic in terms of performance and needing to manage higher level curriculum work when they haven't had some of the basics, as well as that social anxiety piece. We know that during adolescence, there's a use it or lose it process that occurs in the brain, meaning the neural pathways that we create in the brain are very honed during this time period. So if you're not using it, you're starting to lose it. And when we think about social connectiveness, they weren't in school every day talking to peers. They weren't making plans outside of school to go hang out. They weren't exploring their environments the way that they should have been, or the way that we could have done prior to COVID. So during that time period, instead of creating those pathways weren't developed. So now it's important as parents that we start to really help our children and not just think that the status quo is okay, right? Holding up in your room all day long, it's not okay. It's a safe place, we know, but that's not really helpful.
So how can we help our students? We see that they are either holding up in their room still because that's become the comfort place, right? We told them to do that 2 years ago, and now we don't want. How can we help them if we see something? If we see that there's some anxiety, social anxiety?
Right. So, really, what our goal is with our adolescents are to teach them skills that help them become more and more independent. While we would like as parents to be there every step of the way, we're not going to be in their college dorm rooms. We're not going to be there when they're moving into their first apartments. I mean, maybe, but we really want them to have that level of independence. So, as a parent, micromanaging is not the answer, but actually really getting curious about what's going on and helping your child self-reflect, that is really helpful. So, for example, if we have somebody who's hanging out in their room all of the time, talking to them about, I noticed that you've been spending a lot of time in your room. What is it that you've been doing during that time? How have you been connecting? Talking about how you appreciate when they connect with you. And also, if you're seeing that they're not having plans on the weekends, that they're not talking often with friends, really talking about with them, I'm noticing that you don't have plans this weekend. What would you like to be doing? How can we help support you? And one of the things I really teach are things like, how do we text with people? How do we continue conversations? Oftentimes, I find that individuals who are coming into my office are saying, I can't keep up a conversation with someone. And they're right, because they don't ask questions. And then they don't take that conversation from online to something more direct and in person, like a FaceTime chat. So we want to use our social media as a tool to help us connect in real life as opposed to just staying on the text streams.
I love that idea, using social media as a tool because they're going to be on it. We're on it. We're on it right now. So
Right.
using that as a tool to get them to move along the continuum, the socialization continuum, instead of just saying you can't do that anymore and shoving them outside.
That's right. We also teach a variety of conversation starters or concepts. For example, I was just talking with somebody and they said, I've been in school with these people forever. So how am I going to ask a question? How am I going to get the conversation going? And so we really break it down into 4 different areas. One is talking about things like TV shows, music, pop culture pieces that we really like. Another is asking questions around academics, whether it's a project that they have to work on, something that a teacher said or a professor said, talking about studying together. So that's a second area. The third is personal questions, more like, what are your interests? Or do you have, a dog at home? And, when you talk about all of these different areas, all of a sudden you learn more. So you might think you know everybody, but do you know if they have a dog at home? Or do you know where they went on vacation for Thanksgiving or who they celebrated with? There's always something that you can start to connect with people on. And the reality is, everyone else around you wants to connect also. So if you think about the idea that just as much as you want to connect, that other people want to connect, makes it less scary.
That's a great tip. So we have two great tips so far: using social media as a tool for our teens to help them move along the socialization continuum, and also providing them with conversation starters, which is helpful for anybody. I mean, the starters the examples you used are helpful for everybody. And if you switch out school for work, that's another conversation starter. And I know that I'm not the only one here. There are other parents who, when we came out of the lockdown, we're socially stagnant. I was used to being at home and in my comfy clothes, and then you're put out into a social situation. Imagine being a teenager and having that happen, whether it's a 13-year-old or a 17-year-old, and they're still trying to figure themselves out. They may not be as aware that that this is a temporary situation caused by something outside, and this is not me.
Right. And speaking of getting to know yourself, one of the things we also like to really work on is attribute building, is really understanding yourself and understanding how you can, in the world, bring yourself into the social situations. So, for example, I had a college student who had gone, not my personal child, but a college student who had gone on to school, and she was hiding in her dorm room, wasn't really connecting with others, wasn't really taking advantage of the resources around, and was really struggling. And we worked on understanding what are her unique qualities, what are the things that she brings into the world. And she found, and it was easy. I pulled up an attribute list online. So parents can do this, pulling out attribute lists online, talking with your child about what you think their attributes are, helping them figure out what attributes they feel about themselves. And she found that she was adventurous and that she was fun and that she was kind. And so she took that with her and basically ended up figuring out that because she's adventurous, she wants to explore the community. She wants to go out and do things. So she ended up meeting a friend in yoga class. They ended up starting to explore. Next thing you know, she was having too many social outings that she was having a hard time figuring out how to balance school and socialization. So we really like to understand ourselves better through attribute building because everybody has something to offer.
I love that. She went from one end to the other.
Yeah.
We have a comment, Tiffany. Tiffany says I love all your advice. My teen and I have started to volunteer at an animal shelter. I feel it has helped a bit.
Getting out there and being connected into the community is so important. In fact, this weekend we're going to be cleaning up our neighborhood. So I love that you're out there working at the animal shelter with your teen.
I love that they're doing it together, because that may be the first step. Maybe not just shove them out into the world, but go along with them. And they're teens. In a minute, they won't want you.
We have to take advantage while we have them, right?
It's true. It's true. It's true. Um, at the top, I mentioned that there are critical milestones that our teens may have missed. Can you tell us a couple of those? What are some of the milestones that our teens may have missed, depending on their age, and what we can do about that?
Right. So certainly in terms of, let's go back to like the academic development piece, because we know based on the school report cards, according to the National Education Associations, and when we're looking at the reports that have come out on ACT scores, that they're lower than they've been in 3 decades. So we know that they are missing academic information. And as parents, I think that it's important not for us to push so much about the concrete academic information, but more to give them the skills that they need to help manage the situation. So, okay, you didn't do well in school on this math test, for example. What is it? So then getting curious again with them. What is it that worked well for you? What is it that didn't work well for you? What are the resources that you have that you can use? So getting curious. I see that you're backed up, you're up late at night, you're not getting enough rest. right? So working on things like scheduling, not just saying make a schedule because they might not know how to make a schedule, but first sitting down with them and saying, okay, let's see what you have for this week and let's start to estimate how much time is it going to take you to do this work, that work, study for the exams, things like that, and helping them to create a schedule and then let them continue doing that on their own. So, what we want to do is give them those basic skills because those are skills that they might have had more hand holding with in like middle school or maybe the very beginning of high school. But now, if they're in the later years of high school and in college, they miss those during COVID.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I like how you say that parents should be curious, take a curious approach rather than the micromanaging. And that applies to anything when you're raising children, right? It doesn't have to be because you're dealing with COVID, the after effects of being in the house from the COVID pandemic. We have a question. Tiffany says my teen has many bully girls in her grade, and she has no desire to be friends with basically anyone. And that's been a big struggle. Do you have any advice? She tries to provide the conversation starters, and she hears me, but she isn't using them at school. Interesting. She doesn't need to be Miss Popular, but needs to have a couple of peers her age.
That's a great question. We actually deal a lot with bullying. And basically, we teach the three E's: empathy, empowerment, engagement. So, first, it's really listening to her and understanding what is her perspective, right? Why is she feeling that way? Who has made her feel that way? We know that it's not every single girl in the grade, but there is often, a couple of those queen bees who are causing some ripples throughout and looking at a more critical eye as to whom does she see that she could maybe connect with. So empathy is really understanding it from her point of view. Then empowerment is really problem solving with her. Is this something that she needs to talk about with the school counselor if there's bullying going on? Is this something where she can connect maybe outside of school with one girl, two girls, and then connect inside of school, asking those questions, getting more connected. And then engagement is really that follow-up piece, asking her, how did it go? What do you see? I will tell you that I went to a different parent coffee a couple of months ago. I really enjoy the parent coffees. Getting involved in school is helpful because you talk to the other parents. And there was a new student who was having a hard time getting connected in, and the mother was commenting on it. Another mother was saying, oh, my child is going to volunteer someplace. Maybe your daughter wants to come along. Next thing you know, they connected outside of school, and then that created in-school connections. So those are some of the things that I would suggest.
Oh, I like that. I read somewhere, at least I think I did, that bullying is worse post shutdown. Is that true?
Well, everything is kind of a little worse
Yeah,
post shutdown, right?
yeah,
So
yeah.
yes, I do think that because there's been such a need for control that in those situations, and because mental health is suffering, oftentimes what we don't realize is that bullies are bullying because they are actually hurting also. So one of the ways that we can really help support our community is really supporting every child, including the bullies, right? Making them feel better about themselves, understanding maybe it's something from home, maybe it's something social, what right? Maybe it's their insecurity. What is causing that situation for that child?
Wonderful. Are there any other trends? If bullying is getting worse, you said everything is. What else is there that parents should be aware of?
Depression is also definitely increasing. We've seen an increase in suicidal ideation and self harm behaviors, in online people utilizing hashtags that are related to self-harm. And so that's been another issue as well. I'm definitely seeing a lot with girls' body dysmorphia, particularly as they've spent so much time online analyzing and looking at things. So trying to really help your child utilize, going back to the beginning, social media for good, as opposed to relying on social media and doing too many social comparisons or self-diagnosis. I have a lot of individuals, teens, who come in and they think that they have this disorder or that disorder, or it's the flavor of the day, and it's because of a TikTok that they've seen, but actually it's not really what they're struggling with. Most often, what I'm seeing is anxiety, which results in a lot of depression as well.
Now, you named a list of really important things that scare parents. What should we do if we think that one of those things is present in our home with one of our teens?
I
What
think it's really, really important to try and get help, because parents, to be the supporter of your child and recognize what your limitations are and where you can help. So if you're seeing signs of depression, for example, um, not engaging in activities, crying often, irritable often, comments about wanting to harm themselves, seeing any kind of self injurious behaviors, disruptions in sleep, all of those together, you want to get support. And you can start through community supports, like supports in your school. Oftentimes, there are free support services through local organizations like your local church or your local community center. There are low fee options online. There are teen hotlines that you can help your child access. And then, of course, you can always find individuals in your community who provide support services. I use psychologytoday.com often as a resource for parents so that they can read a little bit about the providers and see what might work well.
We have a comment from Deborah. That is helpful information. Deborah says sharing a song that might help a little bit. Oh yes, we did an article on this, Deborah. I love this. I know Victoria's Secret, which is a great song, and I bet you before I finish saying this and reading this, the amazing Jessica will put up our article about that. But it gives perspective that most kids don't realize what they see in the media, in clothing and shopping is not normal body image for most people.
Absolutely. And we also know that even what we're seeing online and social media is also not normal, right? Because we don't see all of the, non-filtered, non-doctored images. And also, when people are posting on social media, they're capturing a moment in time, right? So, yes, it might be that they were with those friends and that they were having a good time, but we don't know the whole story behind anything when we're looking at social media. It's just, the positive Disneyland news of the day.
Exactly, exactly. What I want to make sure that we get out everything the parents need. Of course, we're never going to get out everything, but I'm gonna leave you. I'm gonna give you this question, then I'm gonna go to someone's comment. But think about this: what more do we need to know about these missteps and how we can help our children? You've gone over some really important tips, but before we get to that, I'm going to go to Jennifer's comment. Jennifer says, in addition to increasing anxiety, depression in teens, have you seen an increase in gender identity, expression, confusion, experimentation?
We have definitely seen an increase in gender identity, I will say exploration.
Mhm.
And I view it more as a piece of adolescence. Adolescence is really that time to explore and get to know yourself. And this is another way in which they're exploring and trying to get to know themselves. Your teenager, even your college student, even your graduate school student might not know exactly what profession they're going to be in, who they're going to marry, if they're going to marry, where they're going to live. They don't know exactly what their adult life is going to look like, but they're exploring along the way all different kinds of careers, all different kinds of relationships, and all different understandings of oneself. Who you are today is not who you were when you were 15 or 18 or 20. So it's constantly developing and evolving. So if you look at it as an exploration and are just supportive of your child and their desires to explore and understand that the adolescent brain is really trying to figure out who they are and where they belong, it's less scary.
I like that. What is the one thing, if we only remember one thing, as I said, what is something that we haven't discussed that we need to know or something we need to reinforce?
If you're going to take away one thing, it's about being curious with your child. Don't avoid. If you're seeing something, get curious about it. And also, don't direct. We're past the stage of directing. You're now in the stage of consulting. So you want to be that consultant to your child.
And something I also got from you is that we should acknowledge that they missed these milestones, and we're sorry for that. But this is how would you like to move forward? I know it seems like you're having problems moving forward. How can I help you move forward? Because I can't provide what was missed. It's gone for all of us.
And to really know that they're not alone in that.
Mhm.
Right? The numbers speak volumes. They are not alone. So all of us together need to help support one another.
Thank you. We're here to support you, the parents. Dr. Eve is here to help us support our teams. Together, we can get this and move everybody forward.
Sounds great. Thank you so much, Kamira, for having me.
Thank you for spending time with us today. We appreciate it.
Okay, have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye, everybody.